MultimediaJay Radio Style Theater presents A Goofy Day at the Radio Station.
The Morning Show with Jerry Moe.
Hello, Carissa.
Good morning, Jerry.
What you got going on in the newsroom today?
Oh, you know, news.
MultimediaJay Radio Style.
I could have predicted, and I could have completely called the responses that I got with the discussion about the PlayStation 2 earlier. How'd I know that the PlayStation 2 would generate that kind of a response? Oh no, I still like my PS2. What are you talking about? I still like PS2. I still play PS2. No, you are not alone. I still play PS2. Hey, you know why you're weird? You wear sunglasses in your videos. Okay, that was a little out of left field, but side note, the sunglasses are a character thing for the whole MultimediaJay thing. They're Slasher 2001s. A long, outdated style of sunglasses that they fog up if I wear them too long, so I don't wear them anywhere else except in these videos. So I've got to use them for something, and I used to like wearing those when I was a wild and crazy heavy metal DJ in college because the neon lighting in the radio station was blue, so I'd wear a blue Hawaiian shirt and those sunglasses, and the rest is history. So I don't know if you want to call me a man-child that refuses to grow up, but that's what the deal is with the Hawaiian shirts and sunglasses. I just don't get to wear that stuff anywhere else, and I gotta have fun sometime like everybody else, so that's pretty much what I do. It also ties into the whole MultimediaJay versus more personal type, whatever, character type stuff here on this channel to begin with. Alright, let's talk some PS2 here, because obviously people want to talk PS2, even though it's a horribly outdated 15-year-old console that doesn't even do HD. Well, not not native HD anyways. The Gran Turismo 4 goes up to 1080i, but I was never able to get the 1080i on Gran Turismo 4 to look as good as the 1080p on GT5 on the PlayStation 3. Now, the PlayStation 2 was a massive, and I mean massive success. I think only the Atari 2600 had beats it in terms of longevity. I think in terms of sales, though, it actually has done incredibly well for itself. It kind of almost makes up for its reputation as the Darth Vader console that took down the Dreamcast. But, those old axes to grind aside, I think PlayStation 2 resonates with a lot of people, and it's so common in the secondhand shops today because of its success. A lot of people had a PS2. It was an event when I ran into an original Xbox or a GameCube when I was in college, and even afterwards. And of course, for those people that have been playing since the original PlayStation days, the original, the PlayStation 3, as we know, stumbled out of the gate. Sony pulled a Philips CDI or 3DO with it. Of course, Philips didn't make the 3DO, but Sony pulled a 3DO with the original PlayStation 3, as we all remember, and they released a hyper souped-up piece of hardware that didn't have as much software support as the Xbox 360 when it first came out. So it stumbled out of the gate. It was way too expensive, and there was a time when the PlayStation 2 kept outselling it despite being royally outdated compared to the PlayStation 3. Eventually, of course, Sony got their arse in gear with the PS3 and made it a viable, decent system, which I'm glad, because a lot of the JRPGs and other games like that I like to play are usually on the Sony consoles, although some of the developers warmed up to the Microsoft Xbox line during this whole fiasco with the PlayStation 3. So it's definitely something worth noting, and the PlayStation 2's longevity is partially due to that, I imagine. But I think the bigger issue nowadays, and I was thinking about this while watching a lot of videos by guys like Alpha Omega Sin, talking about the current state of the gaming industry, the endless microtransactions, and simply the simple fact that today's consoles are not even going to be the same as PlayStation 2 consoles because of all the online stuff, all the DRM, all the download, all the DLC, all the season passes, all the requirement that certain servers still be online. I really think the PlayStation 2 is the pinnacle of or the final grand last hurrah of consoles where there wasn't a significant online component and you can still get the games and play them. And also, don't forget patching as well. I mean, what if you get, say, a factory reset 360 a couple of decades from now? Will you be able to get the patches to the games if, say, there were serious bugs at launch and you had no way to patch it because everything's been taken down? It's really scary, actually. And it almost makes me wonder why I even bother with consoles at all anymore when they've become so computerish like this. Yes, the PlayStation 2 is still everywhere on the secondhand scene. You can still find it in all the secondhand shops. You can still find it in the reseller shops. You can find it on eBay. You can find it on the e-tailers. You can still find PlayStation 2 everywhere. And you know what? You can buy a game for the PlayStation 2 and get the experience that, except for maybe if there was an online component like an old Madden game or something, for the most part, you can get the experience that other people got when the game was new. We're not going to be able to say that about this patchorama that's been going on since the PlayStation 2's time. And I was reminded of that very nastily when I fired up my Wii U for the first time in a couple of months last night. I went to play some Mario Kart. I was like, let's finish the night off with a couple rounds of Mario Kart. I go to start the game, big, huge system update. So before I can even do anything on my own Wii U, I have to wait 10 minutes. And I'm having problems with the power line networking equipment that I'm experimenting with for my home network. Randomly disconnecting, so I don't know what that would do if it disconnected in the middle of an update. That wouldn't be good, I imagine, although the good news is the Wii U is on wireless. Sadly, I'm finding my wireless to be a lot more reliable, so I might have to hook up a wireless bridge between my internet gateway and my actual router in order for things to work the way I want them to work, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Ha 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 ha. I know all you network techs out there. Oh, you're going to put your router in bridge mode, right? Yeah, well, anyways. So, yeah, I went to play Mario Kart and nothing. I had to wait for a big, long patch just to start the Wii U, and then I had to wait for another big, long patch to load up Mario Kart. It's just annoying. I know the PlayStation 4 addresses that, but this is the stuff that you don't... I mean, if I want to play PS2, I went and bought a Star Ocean game yesterday with some of the credit from Fat PS2, from getting rid of old fatty, so to speak. I still have a Slim PS2, and I'll get another PS2 if I want to keep playing PS2 whenever the Slim one finally quits. I mean, it's not hard to find the PS2 these days, but... heck, there might even be software emulation, or maybe I should try an emulator on the PC that ups it to HD if I really wanted to. I've seen the Tech Syndicate guys do that. But I bought a Star Ocean game the other day, yesterday actually, secondhand, put in the PS2, and it started up, and I started playing the game. Nice and simple. No big long patches, no DRM, no DLC, no blah blah whatever. And you know what? We're not going to see that. I mean, even the original Xbox had a hard drive, and that was when Xbox Live really took off. It just online became more of a thing with the generation after the PS2. So if people are looking at PlayStation 2 through rose-tinted goggles, I can imagine exactly why. Also, PC is starting to develop a bit of a back catalog as well. I recently purchased Psychonauts on Steam. There's a version of Crazy Taxi on Steam, although I'd have to mod it to get the real music back in. Offspring. Yeah, but that's the thing. I guess these console manufacturers are waking up to the fact that emulation is a thing for a reason. Whether you have the Nintendo eShop, the Wii Virtual Console, Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network, or old games getting ported onto Steam and GOG, people are getting that folks care about software, maybe even to the extent that they will forego proper hardware like a box or a CD or a manual or something just to be able to play the darn classics. And I'm glad that folks are finally waking up to that. But at the same time, it's going to absolutely butcher the scene for secondhand stuff and the retro scene later on, because you're going to have all these gotchas and catches and things like that. We're not going to have what we currently have with the PlayStation 2 probably ever again. And that, I think, is why you'll get the responses that you get with PS2. Not just the fact that we're all in denial that we're getting older and that the PlayStation 2 today is in the position the NES was in when the PlayStation 2 came out as a 15-year-old system. It's not just folks getting old, being in denial of their creeping decrepitude and stuff like that, but the PlayStation 2 really was something special. And it's kind of like a video game console version of kind of like Last of the Mohicans or something like that. It's basically the end of an era for where all you do is just plug in your memory card, put your disc in, and then go, as opposed to whatever patches, DLC, microtransactions, or other assorted rubbish or baggage or whatever the gaming companies and publishers and developers are tacking onto their stuff these days. I mean, a lot of the shenanigans that people complain about on gaming podcasts, when did they first start becoming really widespread? Around the time that these consoles started getting more and more computerish with like PS3, Xbox 360, even the Wii had some of this going on. I have Final Fantasy The After Years on the Wii Virtual Console. It looks like I'm going to have to rebuy it on Steam and then buy all the DLC for it or something like that, because I don't really want to have to turn on the Wii U, then go to the Wii menu, then poke around or to play FF The After Years, when I can just play it natively and as part of my Steam library and not have it tied to a specific piece of hardware. So if, say, my Wii U ever kicks the bucket, I won't lose those games for X amount of whatever. And that's the thing, too. I really think that consoles are not only on their way to being in total defense mode as crappy gaming PCs, because that's what they're turning into. They just have proprietary operating systems. I'm very surprised that Microsoft doesn't want to have Windows 10 on the Xbox One, apparently. That would be the perfect crossover. I think the problem is they built up the Xbox brand alongside PC gaming and games for Windows and stuff like that. So to combine the two together, who knows? It's just, they'd have to really get to work on some software to allow for Xbox stuff in a PC environment, which I don't think they're going to want to do anytime soon. But that's for them to figure out. But yeah, the PlayStation 2, I can imagine that this will probably be a console that people have rose-tinted goggles about. Around here locally, from what I'm hearing, GameCube is in the same position, and even more so, because the games with GameCube were nice and simple, but it was also the console that people didn't have compared to PS2. So there's people out there that are curious what was on that GameCube system that I heard about but never spent the money on. So actually, locally, from what I'm hearing from the resellers down at the video game shop, GameCubes have higher demand than GameCube-compatible Wiis around here, because most folks are looking for a doll. I think a doll 001 does component, and then the 101 did not. So people are more than happy. They don't really care what was on the Wii, because a lot of it, like Twilight Princess, is getting remade. And there's other silly little games like that. It's kind of going to be a curious piece of history aside from Wii Sports with how things went with the Wii. So local demand around here is higher for GameCubes than for Wiis. And I guess among the GameCubes, the Doll 001, the one that supports components. But I don't see why you can't just have a GameCube-compatible Wii as your prog-scan GameCube player. That's basically what I've been doing. Also, it doesn't help things any that my Wii was one of the production runs that had problems with the heatsink compound on the graphics chip. So the Wii portion of it has artifacts on the screen. So I mostly just use it for GameCube games anyways. So, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I can see that, I can very easily see the PlayStation 2's, never mind the PlayStation 2. I can see the PlayStation 2's entire generation, except maybe the original Xbox, because original Xbox is going to be, there's backward compatibility stuff going into the Xbox One. It also had Xbox Live and a hard drive and stuff like that. But I could easily imagine PS2 and GameCube being looked at through rose-tinted goggles, because they represented the end of a much simpler era in gaming, when console gaming actually was just plug and play. Nowadays, you have consoles with system updates, all kinds of other additional features, and you have games with all kinds of patching, system updates, DLC, and all kinds of other stuff as well. I mean, it's just gotten so complicated. You might as well be playing on a PC if you're playing on today's consoles. Heck, Sony finally caved in with the PlayStation 4 and put in a fee to the online services similar to Xbox Live, which is why the only console from, I guess you could say, this generation or whatnot, but the only console that I actually have between PS4, Xbox One, Wii U is the Wii U. And I mostly have the Wii U to be a high-def Mario box. I'm not really interested in the Nintendo NX, whatever it is, or whenever it comes out. I'm mostly interested in eShop and Wii Virtual Console and playing Wii games without them looking like arse because of pixelation, because the original Wii only did standard def. So I actually I picked up Epic Mickey as part of the great swap that I'm doing, as part of the great sift. fired it up on the Wii U, upscaled, and it actually looked pretty good, although I was sitting a little ways away from the television, but I did fire it up, and it did look passable. You could tell when the game started that it was developed for standard def, but again, we go around as gamers preaching about how graphics don't make the game. We need to practice what we preach and be willing to play older stuff that's still good, and maybe even pay a decent price for older stuff that's still good. Not trying to shill for this gaming store, which is actually, I think, struggling right now because of what's going on with the shenanigans with console gaming nowadays, so they're getting stuck more and more with old stuff that people don't want. They're having a bit of an inventory problem, actually, because I have run out of stuff that I'm interested in trading with them, so I'm stopping everything for now. If they can switch out some inventory and get some better stuff in there that I might actually want to buy, then I'll do some more trades. But I'm really disappointed that I've run out of interesting stuff this quickly. They're kind of stuck with titles that aren't selling, and I think they have a bit of a problem with inventory turnover. I think the best thing they could do is start an online component of their business, where if they got stuff that's not moving in the store, they put a listing online, sell it, and ship it, and free up the space that way. And likewise, that gives them some capital to maybe buy some things that people might want or things that might be a little more popular and stock the store with those instead. But I will leave that business to the actual business owner. But at least she's been able to save me some having to send things out to East Starland, at least for a little while. But I am not going to keep putting up with the stuff that's not being played on my shelves. If she can't get some new inventory into that store, I will put a box together and send it off to East Starland. Get over $20 in credit with them, and then cash out for 70% of the credit value, which blows away the 25% that these locals offer. They do 50% if you'll take credit, but I'm not taking credit if there's nothing I'm interested in buying on the spot, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, been playing a little bit too much Crazy Taxi. I saw that game in the arcades back in its day, but never really got to play it very much. I did have one single person I knew in college with a Dreamcast, but I never really played it. I thought that controller was a little awkward anyways. It was kind of huge, actually. I mean, once upon a time, they used to call game controllers paddles, like in the Atari days. I think the Dreamcast controller is probably pretty close to that stuff. We'll talk about the Dreamcast some other time, but yes, PlayStation 2, I understand why people still like it so much. It represents a lot of things that used to be good with console gaming that sadly is no longer the case, and it may very well be the last great hurrah for a successful console that's simple and easy to use that translates into a very popular item in the secondhand market after its production run ceases. I totally understand the rose-tinted goggles about the PlayStation 2, despite its technical shortcomings, no native high-def support, things like that. But in a way, old isn't always bad. I mean, that's something that the culture sometimes likes to parade around when trying to sell you whatever the new thing is. But, I mean, let's take some old technology, for example, like the wheel. Does the fact that your car or your bicycle or whatever has wheels, is that bad just because the technology is ancient? No, of course not. Old does not always equal bad. That's just something that marketers and other types try to condition us to think in order to sell us something that they call new, exciting, blah, blah, blah. When the sad reality is that many times history just repeats itself, and what we think is new and exciting has already been around before in some way, shape, or form. Or it's an incremental improvement on what we already have, and we shouldn't have blown the money on it. Sad, I know, but say la vie. So, final conclusion. I understand why people still like PS2. I didn't intend on trying to bash the PS2. It's just I was wondering with how old the console is and that it is in the same position today that the NES was in when the PS2 was just coming onto the scene. Could I be considered weird for it? Interesting responses to the whole PlayStation 2 discussion, but it's just one of those things where you just ask a question and see what people's answers are. But I understand why people like PS2, and I'm not bashing PS2 either. I like it as well. I kept my slimline PS2, and there's games that I still want to play on it. Just stuff that, it's just not stuff that's been remade for a newer platform or PC. Thanks for listening, everybody. This is MultimediaJay Radio Style. Don't touch that dial. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay signing off. Thanks for stopping by.